A sheet of paper taped inside a locker door, typed on a machine, not printed. 4 exercises down the left side, in order. Tape gone yellow at the corners. I put that sheet up in 1982, and it stayed there 11 years. Every man who trained off it was following the best advice anybody had at the time. 3 of those 4 movements have since been pulled by the same institutions that taught them to me. Nobody wrote to the men still doing them. Is there a lift you still do only because somebody you trusted put it in front of you 30 years ago? Put it in the comments. This is what Strength After 60 covers. Subscribe so you catch the next one. Here is how an exercise disappears. It does not get banned. There is no announcement. What happens is that a governing body quietly stops printing it. A journal runs a paper suggesting a substitute, and 15 years later, nobody under 40 has heard of it. The men who learned it in 1974 never see any of that. They are not reading journals. They are doing what worked. The clearest example I know is the sit-up. The Army built its physical fitness test around push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run, and that test stood for roughly 4 decades. In October of 2022, the Army replaced it. The new test has no sit-ups in it at all. The Navy had already swapped sit-ups for the plank the year before. The Marine Corps lets a man choose a plank instead of crunches. 3 branches of the United States military looked at the same movement and quietly took it out. Every one of those decisions was public. Every one was covered. And not one of them reached the man doing 40 sit-ups on his living room carpet every morning because a drill sergeant told him to in 1968. That is the part that bothers me, not the exercise, the silence around the change. Now let me put the other half of this on the table before I go any further, because I am not here to talk you out of training. In 2025, the American College of Sports Medicine published a position stand built on 137 systematic reviews. Inside it sits an analysis covering more than 38,000 people, over 11,000 of them older adults. Resistance training did not raise the risk of serious adverse events. Not a little, not at all. There is a second number I want you to hold on to. A review of resistance training in the frail oldest old, men and women aged 70 to 92, covered 20 separate studies and 2,544 people. Across all of it, 1 case of shoulder pain was reported. 1. So the training is not the problem, and a man who tells you otherwise is selling you a chair. The problem is 4 specific movements, and the reason they are still in your week is that nobody has taken them out of it. Squats are not on this list. I know that is what half of you clicked to find out. Every video like this one has squats in it somewhere, usually first, usually with a warning about your knees. Mine does not. And by the end, you will see that the movement most men were pushed toward when they gave up squatting is on the list instead. 4 of them. I am going to give you a test for each before I give you the fix, and I want you doing the tests while this is running. Dale Hurrick came down my stairs for 19 years. Crane operator at the mill, a big man with bad hearing and a good back, and every single morning of his adult life, he did 50 sit-ups on the floor beside his bed. He learned them at Fort Benning. He was still doing them at 69. The muscles that let you do a sit-up are your abdominals, and the movement they produce is called spinal flexion. That is the technical word for bending forward. I will call it folding from here on. Here is your test, and do it now. Sit on the edge of a chair. Round your back deliberately, chin toward your chest, and roll down as if you were starting a sit-up, then stop halfway and hold it for 5 seconds. Come back up. If you felt a specific point in your lower back where the movement stopped being smooth, or if coming back up took a shift and a push rather than a pull, note where that was. Now the numbers. And this is the strongest evidence in the whole video. In 1984, 2 doctors at the Mayo Clinic, Sanaki and Mickelson, followed 59 patients with spinal osteoporosis for between 1 and 6 years. They split them by exercise type. The group doing extension work, bending backward, went on to have new spinal fractures at a rate of 16%. The group doing flexion work, folding forward, came in at 89%. 89 against 16. I have to be straight with you about that study because it matters. Those 59 patients were women, aged 49 to 60. Not men, and not our decade. Nobody has run it on men. I looked. What carries across is the mechanism, and men are not exempt from that. 1 in 5 men over 50 will break a bone from osteoporosis in his remaining life. The residual lifetime risk runs as high as 27%, which is higher than a man's lifetime risk of prostate cancer at 11.3. Then there is the load itself. Stuart McGill measured a standard sit-up at roughly 3,300 newtons of compression through the lower spine. That is about 730 pounds. The occupational safety limit in this country for repeated low back compression is 3,300 newtons exactly. Every repetition sits right on the line a factory would not let you cross. The fix is not core work. Keep the core work. Change the shape of it. Anything where your spine stays still while your arms or legs move against load will train the same tissue without the folding. A plank holds, a carry holds, a dead bug holds. Dale switched at 70 after his second scan. He was annoyed about it for a year. Walt Kubiak pressed 135 pounds overhead the week he turned 64, and I have told you about that before. What I did not tell you is that for the first 6 years I knew him, Walt brought the bar down behind his head. That is a behind-the-neck press, and its cousin is the behind-the-neck pull-down, where the bar comes down behind your skull instead of to your chest. In 2017, the American College of Sports Medicine ran a paper in its own practitioner journal listing exercises to replace. The behind-the-neck lat pull-down and the behind-the-neck shoulder press were both on it. And the reason given was an increased risk of anterior capsule instability, nerve impingement, and rotator cuff impingement. Your test. Stand up, put both arms straight out to the sides at shoulder height. Then bend your elbows to 90 degrees so your palms face forward. Now rotate your hands back as far as they will go without your chest lifting. That end position is where the bar puts you. If your hands stop well short of vertical, or if one side stops noticeably before the other, that is the range you have been loading. Here is the context that steadies this rather than frightening you. A screening study of an entire Japanese village, 664 residents, ultrasounded both shoulders on everybody. Full-thickness rotator cuff tears turned up in 0% of people in their 20s through 40s, 10.7% in the 50s, 15.2% in the 60s, 26.5% in the 70s, 36.6% in the 80s, and in the men over 60 who had a tear, roughly 2/3 had no symptoms at all. Read that again, because it dismantles the only defense most men have against this video. Your shoulder feeling fine is not evidence that your shoulder is intact. It is evidence that it does not hurt today. I will give you the argument on the other side, because it is a real one, and I am not going to hide it from you. There are researchers who point out that when the shoulder is loaded in that overhead position, the space under the bone actually opens up rather than closing, and that the imaging studies showing a pinch were done on unloaded arms. They have a point. I do not think it survives contact with a 68-year-old cuff, but I am telling you it exists so you can weigh it yourself. The fix costs you nothing. Bring the bar in front. Same muscles, same load, ordinary range. The third one is the bench you are sitting on. Ray Dombrowski pulled 315 pounds off the floor at 71, and Ray had not done a triceps dip since he was 55. He never explained it to me, and I never asked. I assumed he had gotten lazy about arms. A triceps bench dip is where you put your hands behind you on a bench, feet out in front, and lower your body by bending the elbows. It is on the same 2017 list from the American College of Sports Medicine, cited for shoulder capsule stress in extreme range. Now the honest part. That is a naming, not a trial. There is no study measuring how many men over 60 get hurt doing bench dips, because nobody has run one. I went looking specifically, and it does not exist. What I can tell you is what the position does. It drives the head of your arm bone forward in the socket while your full body weight hangs off it. And it does that at the exact end of the range where the front of the capsule is the only thing holding the joint together. Your test. Sit on the floor, hands flat behind you, fingers pointing back at the wall. Walk your hands away from your body a few inches at a time until you feel the front of your shoulder start to complain. If you found that inside about 6 inches, your capsule is telling you something, and the dip lives well past it. Which of the three so far describes your week best? Tell me in the comments, because the answer decides what I film next. The fourth one is the one I owe you, and it is the reason squats are not on this list. Somewhere between 60 and 65, most men who lift get moved off the barbell. A trainer, a doctor, a son-in-law with a certificate. Stop squatting. It is hard on the knees. Use the machine instead. And the machine they mean is almost always the leg extension, where you sit down, hook your ankles under a pad, and straighten your legs against a weight stack. Here is what the emergency department data says about men who took that advice. A review of 25,335 weight training injuries treated in American emergency rooms found that among people aged 55 and older, 18.2% of injuries involved machines. Among everyone 54 and under, that figure was 9.3%, nearly double in the group that was sent to the machines to be safe. And I have to be careful with that number because it is the kind of number that gets misused. It is a share of injuries, not a rate. It says that of the older men who ended up in an emergency room, a bigger slice were on machines. It does not prove machines are twice as dangerous per hour. Older men may simply use them more, and that would produce the same figure. What I will tell you is that the mechanism is real. The leg extension is what is called an open chain movement, meaning your foot is free in the air rather than planted. Your knee joint absorbs shear that a squat, where the foot is on the floor, distributes through the whole leg. You gave up a movement that loaded your hips, your back, and your knees together, and you replaced it with one that loads the knee alone. You will find people online quoting a study showing 40% more knee pain in men over 60 doing leg extensions. I went and looked for it before I filmed this. I could not find it. If it exists, It is not where the people citing it say it is, and I am not going to repeat a number I could not put my hands on. So here is the absolution, and it is the last thing on this list rather than the first for a reason. The other three were programs you were issued a long time ago by people doing their best with what they knew. This one is different. This one you were moved on to recently, deliberately, by somebody who thought they were protecting you. You did not make a mistake, you took advice. The fix is the movement you were talked out of. Squat to a box at a height you can control. Load your hips and your knees together the way they were built to work. Now, what is not on this list? Every video of this kind includes the upright row, where you pull a bar up the front of your body to your collarbone. It is on all of them. I went looking for the injury data before I filmed this, the way I did with the others. And there is no peer-reviewed evidence on it that I could find. There are opinions, there are a great many articles, there is no study. I am not going to hand you a fifth thing to be afraid of just because everybody else does. 4 movements. 3 of them were withdrawn by the bodies that taught them, and 1 of them was handed to you as the safe alternative. In every case, the withdrawal was public and the notice never arrived. I ran that room for 41 years, and the men who were still carrying their own groceries at 80 were never the ones you would have bet on at 40. They were not the strongest, and they were not the most careful. They were the ones who noticed when the ground moved under them and adjusted, instead of running a program from 1982 until it ran out. Go find the oldest exercise in your week, not the hardest one, the oldest. Ask who taught it to you and whether that person would still teach it today. That question is worth more than anything else I have said, and I am going to take it apart properly in the next one. Subscribe to Strength After 60 and you will catch it.